Hi, good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to our English as a Second Language program. This module is intended to provide basics and background, and also some ways you can use distance online to teach your ESL students. And going back to modalities, I think probably the hardest one to reach out to there right now will be our distance hard copy. But slowly but surely, we are coming up with better solutions to support our students that are in that modality as right now. Because we always aim for the keyword for today is equitable services. Speaking on behalf of our my colleague, this actual module was presented earlier, so this is a recording for those that missed it. So since it's a recording, if you get lost, you can always go back and forth in the video. And this is us right here. Oh, I'm blocking myself. There you go. And this is Dr. Matilda Rivera. She's a longtime ESL teacher coordinator. And myself, Felix A. Chaco. Okay, just a couple of facts here. I'm going to move my video up there. Okay, so in 2018, out of 29,719 public school students, the ESL population, which included all program types, which we'll get into, made up 18,690 students. So this indicates that 63% of our entire population were identified as English language learners or English learners. So if you see the chart here, it also provides you a number with regard to the other special programs. For example, GATE, SPED, here's our ELL or English language learner, our Head Start, and even our students that participated in Escuela en Puerto, which means night school. So we have a total of 24,244 students on that school year alone that made up our special programs. Oh, transition there. Okay, there we go. Okay, so a couple characteristics that we'll point out here. I'll leave the slide up so you can read it on your own. I really do not read slides verbatim. I always have notes with them, and I can answer some of this off the top of my head as well. So the first part is you see home language survey. Okay, so this is in the initial registration process. This is the guiding document that lets us know that the student that is registering at this particular school site is indeed exposed to another language other than English. And if any question is answered with a response other than English, then we go on to the next part. And if you read the second one, it's pretty straightforward, dealing with linguistically and culturally diverse backgrounds. And we do. We actually have a nice array of linguistically and culturally diverse backgrounds with regard to our students. We don't just have FSM students, we have students from Asia, we even have students from Russia that have been identified. And one of the popular questions is, does your child speak a language other than English? That possibly is the most important question that we need to know. And if this answer yes, then please indicate what type of language. And once that is set, then assessment is set. So once identification through the home language survey is conducted, we have assessment. And you really see a glimpse of the assessment here. It's called LAS. LAS stands for Language Assessment Scales. This is the test that we provide our students to determine proper placement. So once this occurs, we send out what is called a notification of eligibility. And this gives us permission to proceed with the services. And for the most part, these services are always agreed upon with our parents. If in the event that they decline the services, there are other services that we can provide. But it's always as a last resort. We always want to encourage our parents to take advantage of these services because ultimately it's to benefit their child. And This particular document is called a notification of eligibility, and it's always within the ESL manual that all coordinators should have. And within the manual, there's a whole array of appendix items, and this is where all these forms I'll be talking about, are located. And if you require these forms as a teacher, you can reach out to me. I can always provide these forms to you, or your ASL coordinator can also provide these forms to you as well. Okay, so here's some program options. When you see your roster, you're going to see a bunch of numbers. You might see, depending on what level, you might be elementary or secondary. You're going to see numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 5, or even an 8. And we'll go some over these. We'll we'll go over some of these program options. So option one is pull out program type one. This happens in elementary. This basically is where the coordinator slash teacher will pull the students out from several classrooms and conduct a session. It could be reading, it could be writing, it could be improving speech. There's all kinds of things that could be happening there. And it's all dependent on the type of language proficiency that needs to commence, the type of instruction. The type of instruction determines the type of academic instruction as well. So first, we try to master language proficiency in itself, speaking, reading, everything that involves with English, and also try to incorporate academic language at the same time. So that's where the coordinator and the regular classroom teacher, or the RCT, they work hand in hand together. And usually that happens in the elementary level as well as the secondary level. But the difference between elementary and secondary is that secondary concentrates on content area versus the elementary teacher who teaches all the contents. So the PLC or the CLT, whatever you're involved with, may be different depending on your level. Option two, we have sheltered language arts classes. This happens in elementary, where one teacher, ESL teacher who's certified, has an entire class and is dedicated to language arts for shelter. And in this case, they can also give the grade for that particular class. And this usually happens in a school site with high population or a high amount of identified English language learners or English learners. Okay, so option three, program type three, happens in the secondary. This is sheltered, but the difference between secondary and elementary is secondary focused on content area. So for example, they could have US government ESL or EL and a regular government class. The only difference is the size and the type of learning and the combinations that need to occur in the sheltered US government course. This one, program option four, this one is is our most abundant. Um, these students, some of them have been transitioned from a sheltered class into a regular classroom, and we stick with consultation usually because you still want to monitor the student and how the student really functions in a regular class. And sometimes we have these students that actually speak very good, they can read very good, but their writing is weak. So we determine that there's still some kind of academic proficiency or academic language proficiency that must occur. So we keep them in this and we monitor, because ultimately we want to get to exiting them out of the program. If we exit it out, if we exit a good amount of students per year, then that means that it's working. Whatever, all the initiatives that we've been conducting, all the programs, it's working. We're working to get these students to transition from one type of program into a program where they're just like their regular mainstream student counterparts. So this one is for, we do have students that are identified both EL and SPED, but usually speaking, their SPED courses tend to dominate the schedule, or they tend to supersede, only because it's deemed in the IEP that whatever it be emotional disability or learning disability, it's better off if the education or the instruction occurred in a sped classroom versus even a shelter classroom. This is for follow-up. In secondary, you're going to see this a lot. Your coordinators who will be asking you to follow up on a couple students. And this particular sheet is very easy. You basically just fill in the grade, uh, the student information and everything, and you pass it along to each other. And then the coordinator takes a look at it and says, okay, it looks like this student we're able to exit this student. So now they can change the program type and have an exit. So we follow up on students that were parentally wavered. This is when parents don't want their services, regardless of what we tell them they don't want. It is a service that we provide, sort of like an indirect service. But I always caution coordinators to not use this so much, because it should be the last resort that we should be promoting to our parents. We have MA, which means met all. They met all criteria to exit, and we say exempt. Um, these students that are exempted from testing, uh, they could have this This deals with our district-wide testing, that they're exempt for testing for 1 year because they're newly registered to the department. But also EX could also stand for exit. They have exited the program. So MA or EX must be followed up at least 2 consecutive years. Okay, a couple challenges here listed. Let me move my video here real quick so you can see this. Between ELs and native English speaking students, 4 to 7 years means that's the average. Some of them are quicker than that, and some of them are really slower than that. So all depends on if we're getting through to these learners. We do have our learners in my experience, I had a girl that came in freshman year, couldn't speak any English. She came from one of the smaller islands. I think it was Sotowal, and over a year, it took her just to start speaking to her classmates. And then after about 2 or 3 years, she couldn't stop speaking. And one of her struggles was reading. And once we fostered that, she was able to develop in maybe about in about less than 3 years. So it's all dependent on the learner. If it starts in elementary, it may develop in middle school. If it starts in middle school, it may be already good to go, and they may reach some kind of proficiency in high school, and that's academically, not just the social language. So once again, that's what LAS means, stands for language assessment scales. So you can take a look at the slide here real quick and just read it out. And once again, you can always go back if this is a recording. Okay, all right. So we're going to move on. Okay, so a couple modifications and accommodations you can do in your classroom. They're pretty straightforward. These actually appear in the forms that I was talking about earlier. Here's a couple more. We'll kind of go over them. Put a little pause between the slides. Once again, you can always go back and pause it in case you want to use any of these presented in any of these slides. This one deals with lessons. So if you notice here, it says state and post clear content and language objectives. That comes straight out from the SIOP handbook, which we'll be talking about. Assessment, this one deals with assessment. You notice a couple things here. Alternative evaluative methods. This comes from SIOP. Because in SIOP, you're constantly assessing. Assessment doesn't mean you're giving this ABCs test or this fill in the blank test. In SIOP, you constantly assess and you can use that for your students' progress and as well as towards any part of their grade, be it participation or even just assignments. Okay, so getting into SIOP again, going back to SIOP, there's 8 main components, which is lesson preparation, building background, comprehensible input, strategies, interaction, practice, application, lesson delivery, and review and assessment. I've only read this because this is something that once you master this in SIOP, it's pretty much like riding a bike. You're not going to forget to do any of this, especially building background and comprehensible input. When we have our SIOP training, these are 2 things, or actually these 8 components is basically your basics of really getting SIOP down rooted. So here's a couple lesson plans right here. And these are just templates. It's really up to you which template you use. If you can keep it simple like this one, that's fine. And this is actually a good lesson plan template. If you're using the district model of the 3 pillars, this also can still be incorporated as your sub lessons. And here's template number 2. And all of this too can be no, we don't offer it in the manual, but it can be delivered to you anytime. Just like I said, reach out to me at fachaco at gdoe.net, or your local coordinator should have a copy of these templates. And here's template 3, template 4, and going to transitioning into CITW. CITW is similar to SIOP. In this case, instead of 8 components, they have 9 components. And CITW leverage with SIOP can really help you with the distance online. Now, going back to distance hard copy, can we do some of these? Of course we can. The only issue is we don't know the home learning environment for distance hard copy. But it's safe to say that it's just good to make even your Google Classroom make it all for your distance hard copy or face to face, because there's going to be an instance that they might have that access, and it's always good to give them and afford them that chance. And it goes back to the key term of today, that's equitable service. So a couple things taken from CITW or even SIOP. We have our 4 corners, and it's all dependent on how you want to set it up. Some will set up where the word's at, it'll be the illustration and then the word, or make a sentence or word in the context, or and of course final the definition. To me, it doesn't matter what order you go, but as long as you have these 4 elements working for you for your 4 corners. Here's another good one: give one idea to a partner, get one. Give one, get one. Uh, this is strategies that SIOP employs, even CITW. Um, but of course, due to our COVID-19 and practicing social distancing, students can hold up their idea from where they are sitting in exchange for another idea from their partner. So if you're in a face-to-face setting, if we go back to normal, then it's possible. But can we do this in distance online if you have the opportunity to teach any of your ESL students distance online? Yes, which we'll get into that towards the end of this module. Couple things: the sweepers, survey, question, predict, read, respond, and summarize. This is something you can do for both distance online and even distance hard copy. The only challenge with distance hard copy is we don't know the home environment. I mean, distance hard copy would good if parents are knowledgeable, they have an older brother, maybe a younger sister, and they could collaborate with one another and support each other. Then we got a win-win situation there. But if we don't, then we're going to have to really identify those students and make sure that we reach out to them and try to communicate them as much as possible. We have the KWHL chart. Usually it's the KWL, but this one has the how I can learn more, which is pretty cool. And if you see some of the examples there, we can leverage distance online strategies and distance hard copy as well. We can probably just take out the, or no, we don't have to take out the H because hopefully the library be open or some way they can get some sort of information on how they can learn more other than the internet. Reading is always important, you know. If you're a parent and you read to your child, more than likely they had a bigger vocabulary. They're a little bit more intelligent in school and so forth because they got this development early. So the earlier you can read, I mean, even now in high school, believe it or not, at GW, when I used to read to my high school students, my ESL students, they really loved it. They enjoyed it. They forgot how soothing and how comfortable it is when someone is reading to you and you try to follow along, but if you don't know that word, the word was said to you right away because your teacher or even your parent was reading to you. So we always encourage reading, regardless of what uh, stage you're in. If you can read to your own child, read to your students, it's always a good thing. Use appropriate, engaging materials. Yes, visuals are always good, and that brings me to another key word, uh, which is non-linguistic representation. That's visuals, that's pictures, that's anything you can touch to to make you understand what you're talking about without even saying a word. That's a real challenge. And going back to the four corners, that's a good example of incorporating non-linguistic representation. We talk, read, and sing together. This would be great. Music teachers out there, do you want to teach a song in English, or even your tomorrow teachers out there want to teach a song in tomorrow over Google Meet or even Zoom? This would be interesting video to see and how we can engage like this. And you can even promote them to sing a song in their first language. So now we're going back to culturally responsive teaching, which is also, mind you, will be part of our ongoing training series. So be looking out for that one. Here's a couple resources. I'll just go to them really quick. Once again, you can always go back to the video and freeze it if you really want to know these, uh, get into these various online resources. This one's pretty good, Nabe. This actually incorporates first language and second language, so it's bilingualism. And believe it or not, bilingualism was around back in the day, where regular classroom teachers used to teach the tomorrow class and so forth. Um, I could really foresee a classroom where a Pohnpeian teacher or a Chuukese teacher or a speaker of those languages will teach using both languages, a dual language program. That actually will be very beneficial, and and also it will support our English as second language program. As a matter of fact, if we can leverage these kind of ideas and we get back to normal, I think we can strengthen um, our very main goal to get our students academically prepared for the real world. Couple more TESOL. We always think about TESOL. TESOL means teacher English of a second language. Okay, couple more resources here. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of our of this part. Right now, you should by now, if you're watching this, you may want to take a little break, maybe about 5 minute break. And before you do, just take a look at these quizzes here, this little quiz here, and test yourself and see whether or not um, any of these questions stand out to you. These are questions that that you can keep for reference. And also, this quiz leads up to our next session. So go ahead and take a 5-minute break and then come back. Once again, you can always pause the video and repeat it in case you get lost. All right, let's go and continue. Don't mind that ding, that was my phone. Okay, so this actually is a little quiz um, for the next part of our ESL program module. And in this particular module, we'll actually look at some of the applications within our Google Suite that we can use to promote learning and to assist our English language learners with learning. Because remember the two key words, equitable service. The other one is non-linguistic representation. All right, you can go ahead and read a couple of the questions here. I'm going to move on. One that really stands out, though, to me is motivation to learn a second language is largely internally driven. That one really stands out to me. We're going to move on. Okay, so a couple major considerations with distance learning and our EL students. The first, you got to be familiar with your EL's unique situation, student's home situation. This one is basic common sense, for we don't know and certainly should not assume the conditions for our EL's home life and culture. For example, are there multiple families living under one roof? If this is the case, then can we say it may be difficult for parents and or guardians to establish a proper work study place for their home learners? Helping students make the transition. Transition and distance learning can be difficult, especially if they view school sites as either safe havens or the only place they can actually learn. And believe it or not, we have a lot of students that look forward to go to school just to have a different environment and even just to eat lunch. If you think about it, even our regular students don't really prefer distance learning for the reason of viewing the school site as a chance to meet their to meet their peers and socialize with their peers. So that's one thing we got to consider when we transition into distance online or even distance hard copy. And in this case, you might want to manage the rigor and the workload. Um, I know it's easier just to inundate your students with work, um, but for these particular students, you might want to manage that rigor and don't water it down. You come up with meaningful activities, and that's pretty much the whole point of this. I'm trying to show you what you can use, what you have access to, without having to purchase any special software. It's really the sky's the limit, and it's your imagination how you use these tools. But I'm here to show you how to use it because believe it or not, we do have some of our teachers out there that have a trouble even accessing it, and we're always going to be here for you with module trainings like this. And of course, this is not the end of it. We have follow-up module trainings. We possibly could have trainings from experts in this, because throughout the years of doing all these trainings, a lot of our teachers have invested in it. So as a department, we built this sort of capacity, and I'm actually one of those personnel that can actually provide SIOP training, for example, and really I have no problem with it. There's so many instances where I just provide the training one to one to a teacher who just really needs that attention. And is that a problem for me myself? No, it's not. You can always reach out to us. So this slide focuses on parental involvement and culture of schooling. So in some cultures, even in even with face-to-face instructional settings, we tend to get less parental involvement, especially in the secondary, with the exception of elementary, perhaps. Now, with our current situation, parental involvement will be needed more than ever. But we can't expect them just to figure it out. We need to help them along the way. Within our EL population, parental involvement is difficult enough in a face to face setting. Thus, can you imagine the difficulty via distance learning where language and academics are barriers to effective parental communication and involvement? So if you look at the slide, there's a couple things to consider here. One thing to consider with parental involvement, it's important to understand that a teacher's expectations with education and instruction may not match the cultural norm of the student's family. So that's going back to that, is education internally driven or is it externally driven? So parental involvement and culture of schooling continue. Questions to consider: is schooling considered competitive or cooperative? Is individual work valued over group work? And I'll let you go ahead and read the rest here. The questions within this slide are just a few questions EL experts have asked through the years regarding parental involvement and culture. Note that these questions were asked when educational settings were normal. Now we're in this pandemic. Questions like this, like the ones above, will enable better decisions to be made, assuming, of course, we attain the answers. Additionally, do these questions and their given solutions help us to make better decisions with regard to distance learning for EO students? Oh, skip the slide there. Oh no, we did. So yeah, going back to this, these are questions that experts have been wondering about, especially how it declines within the secondary level. Okay, so right now, as I mentioned earlier within this module, our current best practices, we have SIOP, Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, CITW, which means Classroom Instruction That Works, and of course, whole language practices, and even up to now, direct instructional practices still occur. Um, some of my elementary counterparts actually use it because it really helps their learners that are kindergarten that just came to our island and they really cannot speak. So direct instruction provides that basic tool necessary, like the screwdriver and the plier is your basic tools. So that's what they're given at that point until they reach to a point where they can be given better tools towards their education and their learning and instruction. Okay, so here's the SIOP model framework, and it's basically this. It's an umbrella, and in this umbrella we have cooperative learning on through differentiated instruction, and we have keywords there like technology. All right, so really think about it. SIOP is a type of initiative that evolves with a type of learning, and right now it is in the right place at the right time to be introduced more to our teachers and really buy into it because it does evolve into our current. Just like going back to if you haven't heard about SBG, standards based grading would lend itself to especially distance online learning, as much as SIOP would lend itself to distance learning, and even distance hard copy. And of course, face-to-face, it shines in face-to-face. Okay, you notice the two icons here. We're going to go back to that soon. We're going to go back to these icons soon. And these are icons or applications that are available in your Google Suite. Okay, so Google Meet and Jamboard. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, the first step we need to do is we need to open up the application. Now, for this case, in the training, we were doing it, we were actually sharing how to open this up. Okay, in this case, since it's the slides, I'm going to show you the slides with actual screenshots. And you're welcome to try to follow the directions as I go. I'm going to move as slowly as possible so it gives you time to really catch up. Now, that's if you're able to do this. If you're using your phone on this, that's another possible way. You have your phone listening to this and you have your computer open, you can practice the steps. Remember, you can always pause it and go back in case you get lost. So we'll go over the tabs and and hopefully we can get into some activities here. Okay, but I'm going to go over the slides first for now. So within this slide, there's a step-by-step process to start sharing your Jamboard screen during your Google Meet. The following screens will provide screenshot for the process. Hence, you already have an idea of how to promote minimal non-linguistic representation with meaningful visuals. The only drawback with our current Google Suite is all end users must have an official GDOE email. That's if you want to open up all the applications. If you're watching this post-module training, go ahead and click on the Google application icons to practice the steps. So as I mentioned, you could practice along. One way is to have, if you have your phone open and then your computer, you can go and try it on your own. Okay, so here we have step one. Open up the Google Meet application. Now, if you look here, this is, if you've gone to those modules, we call this the waffle. Okay, you remember the waffle? I guess we call it a waffle because a waffle has this much holes. I don't know why, but I think it's pretty cool. So you click on the 9 dots and look for the icons. Open up Google Meets. It looks just like this. Looks just like this. Okay, and once you're in there, okay, step 2. Once you join the meeting, and I'll go ahead and take you through a process of that. Once you join the meeting, okay, you can leave the meeting open, and then the next one is to open up a Jamboard and start a new application. So you got to, on that step, you got to click on the present button. Okay, I'm going to go back another slide. So right here, when the Google Meets open, oh, and mind you, we're going to go to the steps that I just talked about earlier. When the Google Meets app opens, write in a meeting title. And this is optional. You don't have to. You can just press continue. Okay? So once you're there, you click on the present button. Okay? You're about to present. Sometimes it'll automatically make you join. Sometimes it won't until you click join now. But for now, let's go ahead and click on the present button. Okay. So once again, remember that last slide that had the steps, I'm taking to the steps per slide. Okay, so once we do that, you're going to have a window like this. And it says Chrome tab on the top. You can present your entire screen or a certain application window. But in this case, we're going to use Chrome tab. So if you see, I have my Jamboard open up in one of my tabs. And one of my recommendations to you guys is do not open so many tabs. Close all unnecessary tabs so you don't get confused. If you see this list long and you're going through a session and you're sharing your screen, you may get lost and you may share the wrong thing. So just be mindful of that. Okay, so once you see this, in this case, we choose Jamboard demo. Okay, you know you're successful when you see this on the top where it says sharing this tab to meet google.com, and then next to it you see stop. Now, when you don't want to share the screen anymore, you just press stop. Okay, so within your Jamboard, you'll be able to add photos and such. So let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. Yeah, we'll get into it right now. As soon as open up. Okay, I'm going to transfer the window here on Jamboard. And here we go. Here's my Jamboard right now. Okay, so here, there's so many things I can do. But let's go ahead and clear this frame right now. Okay, and let's look at the tools to the left. Okay, so going back, this is if your Meet was open already. Okay, so if you go here, if your Meet was open, and if you get lost in that, I'll go ahead and go back to that and show you how to do that. Okay, so let's first take a look at the Jamboard. We cleared our frame, so we have a couple tools here. We have background. We have a dot background. We have a line background, a graph background, a gray graph background, a blue, and the black. Let's go for the black. Or actually, let's go for the paper. Okay, let me move my video up here real quick. Okay. And remember when we talked about four corners? Let's go ahead and see if we can use Jamboard for this. Now, you could go here to this tool, and this tool is to write. This tool is to erase. This is to move any object you put or select any object that you place in your Jamboard. This one here adds a sticky note. This one here adds an image. And if you look at here, you can actually search up a Google image. So let's set this, let's look for a Google image. All right. So let's go ahead and let's put, this one looks pretty nice right here. Okay. Sometimes it takes a little while to load up. But here we go. Here's the picture. And just be mindful of the pictures that you're loading. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that there. Before we do that, you can always, oh, here is a circle. Okay. You can make shapes or circles. So you could put an arrow if you wanted to. In this case, we don't need that, so we'll go ahead and delete that. You could put a square or a rectangle or make a square. In this case, we don't need that right now. And this is our text box. We're going to use that right now. So we're going to write here word illustration. Okay, we're going to get this and put it right there. Okay, so I think you know where I'm going. So let me make it a little better for you by using this trick. Because you could actually draw a line, or you could use one of the shapes, and you could stretch it out if you wanted to, like this. Right? As much as possible, just kind of thin it up as much as possible. You can use it that way. Or if you want a clear line, you could delete that, and we could drag a text box here, add a text box in. Let's go ahead and drag it here all the way down. And we can kind of even out your workspace here. Two line. That's why I like to use the line, because it really helps you to guide. So when you get in here, go back to edit. So every time you go back to edit, that's how you can edit this particular text box that you put in. So in this case, I'm going to press shift and the line. And now I made this clean line all the way through. Go backspace a little bit. And here I made this clean line. To make it easier on you, you could go here to the snowman or the three dots, go ahead and duplicate it. And here's the other one that we duplicated, and go ahead and shift it around this way. And don't worry about the line being outside your board. It doesn't really matter what's out here. It only really matters what's in here. See? So now we have these three nice separate lines separating it. Let's go ahead and move this up a little bit. Because you could have drawn a line using the pen. And even if you had a touchscreen computer, it's really hard to make that. I'm using a mouse right now to make that clean line. So this is one example where you can place in a clean line using the text box. Or if you prefer, you can always use the shape. And like I said, you could really thin this out as much as possible, but that's really so much you can go with that. So it's really up to you. I'm going to leave that out. So I can add another text box here, and I will say the word. Remember what I mentioned? It didn't matter what order you put. It just as long as you have all three. So the word, go ahead and there's another trick. Duplicate the text box, edit, and we'll say firefighter. Okay, wrong. My bad. Right. And we can make the word bigger. Okay. And then I think you get where I'm going. My point is that Jamboard is one of those perfect um, ways to use technology to teach pretty much any student. It doesn't have to be ESL. I mean, really works with using this here and really using all the tools that are available to you. Um, it's really the sky's the limit, and it's really up to your imagination to use this. And believe it or not, if you give your students a chance to use this, th- they can be so creative. Oh, here's another thing that's really interesting. Um, that even oh, put it wrong, but still good. Let's go ahead and go with the banana here. Okay. Okay, so let that load up a little bit. Okay, so you notice that even animated GIFs work in this Jamboard. So can you imagine the creativity and possibilities of students once they learn how to use it, once you learn how to use it, to use this application that's free to them and free to you as well. The only limitations with some of our G Suite, they do require these plugins, and I'll show it to you here. And these plugins here, they're not all free, so they do have limitations. Some of them are very good to purchase. They're not that expensive, but once again, we don't encourage you to spend money that you don't need to. If I were you, use goal within your limitation in case you don't want to purchase it. Um, but if it does benefit you, then go for it. Like myself, I purchased the full version of this screencast, and I think it's one of the strongest screencasts that I've actually ever had the privilege of deploying. So it's really up to you. And once I said the sky's the limit, I mean, can you imagine this is the kind of work your students can submit, and it can be so creative, and they're not limited to just paper and pencil and such. And once again, I do feel for our our distance hard copy students, but hopefully, if everything is good and we get back to normal, um, we open up these, or not really normal. We open up these learning community centers, so even our ESL students, our STED students, can have the equitable service of having technology and having the access to the internet. Oh yeah, this is the Jamboard. So we'll go ahead and go back to. I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this real quick. So we'll go ahead and go back to the Google Meet since I'm here right now, and I'm gonna go ahead and open up the Meet on my waffle, and I'm gonna go to open up in this window right here so you see exactly. So just join the meeting. You can leave that blank, and then once you're in the meeting, go ahead and press OK. So I'm gonna go back to my drive, and this is going back to opening up your Jamboard from your waffle. So I really was excited to show you the Jamboard, but I'm gonna show you actually real time on how to share it. Okay, so it's going back to this. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and minimize that. Then we're gonna go to present. And if you notice here in the tabs, you see Jamboard demo. So once again, you click on that tab and it's gonna open it up. And now whoever's on your Meet will see this screen. And you know that you're sharing because you see sharing this tab to meet.google.com. And you know where you're in. So that was the process. And once again, go back to the slide. Um, it goes step by step. If you get lost, just repeat, just fast forward or rewind the recording. You might be seeing this in the website, or you should be seeing this on the website. And also first, probably you might be seeing it on YouTube first. Okay, so that was pretty much our module. And see, I'm doing like a Google Meet here right now, which I'll go ahead and get out. So I was doing a Google Meet on a screencast at the same time, which I think is pretty cool. Um, and once you're in there, like I said with the Jamboard, let me move my video down here real quick. Move myself to the left. Using this application, the sky's the limit. And I encourage you to if you're new to it, play around with it and and get used to it. Um, I can't. Once I start, I'm like a little kid, messing around with it. And when I found out that you could put animated GIFs, this application just turned into something really, really wonderful for students to express their their that word I'm looking for, their creativity. I don't know why that word got stuck, but anyways, thanks for your time, and I want to thank all our staff members out there. Out there, I want to thank Mr. Algarito. He's the one's going to be putting this up on YouTube, and if he, in case he didn't, in case Al forgets to say, you know, uh, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Adios.